I didn't know my marriage could end because of a single notification that blinked onto a screen like a flare in the dark. It wasn't a lipstick stain. It wasn't a late night work meeting. It wasn't even the classic, I swear it's not what it looks like. It was a message, bright, casual, obscene in its confidence, popping up on my husband's iPad while steam from the kitchen still clung to my hair. Can't wait to see you later, babe. Wear that red lingerie I like. My fingers went cold around the edge of the counter. The room didn't move, but something inside me did, like a hinge snapping. His name was Adam. We'd been together since college. 12 years. Married 7. The kind of love that grows roots in the same soil as your adulthood. Jobs, bills, inside jokes. The first we that becomes your identity. The kind of love you don't imagine living without. Until the day you realize you've been living with a stranger. I shouldn't have opened the thread. I did. There were hundreds of messages, photos I couldn't unsee, words I could practically hear in his voice, even though they weren't meant for me. And the name at the top, Erin, hit with a second wave of nausea because Erin wasn't some random woman from a bar. Erin was Adam's stepsister. Family. The kind of person who sat at the same table during holidays. The kind of person who hugged me with the same arms that had been wrapped around my husband. When I confronted him, he didn't scream. He didn't even deny it for long. He just crumpled, face wet, hands shaking, voice cracking, admitting the affair had been going on for months, like that made it less grotesque. And that was only the beginning. Because when I finally told his father and stepmother the truth, when the whole family detonated in my living room like a grenade, something changed in the rubble. Lines redrew themselves. Loyalties snapped. People I thought were permanent turned temporary. And months later, in a twist I still can't fully explain without feeling my cheeks burn with shame and defiance at the same time, I found myself sitting across from Adam's father, realizing the only person who truly understood what Adam had destroyed was the man who raised him. And when Adam found out, he called me disgusting, as if betrayal hadn't started with him. I'm 32, and for most of my adult life, I've measured time in before Adam and with Adam. We met during sophomore year at a mutual friend's party, the kind of cramped apartment where the music is too loud and everyone is pretending they're not awkward. I remember hovering near the kitchen, nursing a drink I didn't even like, watching people move around each other with that effortless confidence I never had. Then Adam slipped into the same corner like he'd been assigned to it too. He wasn't loud. He wasn't trying to win a room. He just existed in a way that made me feel less watched. You look like you're thinking about escaping through the window, he said, half smiling. I laughed because it was true. And something about the way he said it, like we were in on the same joke, made my shoulders drop for the first time all night. Adam had this quiet steadiness that felt like safety. When he asked for my number, my hands shook so badly I typed one digit wrong and had to correct it, cheeks burning. He didn't tease me. He just waited, patient, like my nerves were something normal, not something embarrassing. We started dating a few months later. It wasn't a movie romance. It was late-night library dates, cheap takeout, him walking me home even when it was out of his way. He was the one who remembered my coffee order, the one who texted, "made it," when I drove anywhere at night, the one who stood behind me at parties and rested his hand lightly at my waist like a quiet anchor. We fought, of course, especially near graduation. I got an offer in our college town, stable, practical. Adam wanted the city. Bigger opportunities, bigger life. We spent weeks circling the same argument, each of us pretending it was about geography, when it was really about fear. What if we chose wrong and resented each other forever? I remember one night, sitting on the edge of our mattress in the tiny off-campus apartment, my knees pulled to my chest. Adam sat on the floor, back against the bed frame, eyes on his hands. I don't want to lose you, he said, voice rough, but I don't want to wake up in 10 years and feel like I didn't try. I swallowed hard, and I don't want to follow you and become background in your life. He looked up then, really looked, and something softened in his face. You're not background, he said. You're the only thing that's ever felt like home. In the end, we chose each other. I turned down the local job. We moved to the city after graduation with almost nothing. 2 suitcases, a mismatched set of dishes, and the kind of optimism only 20-somethings can afford. Those first years were hard. Entry-level pay, a studio apartment so small we could hear each other breathe. We argued about money, Real arguments, not cute ones. There were nights I cried in the bathroom because I was terrified we'd made a mistake, and Adam would knock softly and say, "Talk to me." Not stop, not calm down, just talk to me. We built a rhythm anyway. Weekend walks, cheap museum days, late night talks about the future, house, kids, stability. I loved him the way you love someone who's been there through your worst versions. And then there was Lena, Adam's stepmother. Adam had always been close with his dad, Robert, but Lena was the emotional center of their family. Sharp, successful, the kind of woman who speaks once and people listen. When I first met her, I was so nervous I spilled water on the tablecloth and wanted to disappear. Lena just handed me a napkin and said, "If that's the worst thing that happens tonight, we're doing great." Over the years, she became a presence in my life that felt almost maternal. She supported Adam and me when my own parents were skeptical about us marrying so young. When we finally bought our small suburban house, Lena hugged me and whispered, "You two earned this." So when Adam's father and Lena went through a messy divorce 5 years ago because Robert had been having an affair, Adam was devastated, but Lena was shattered in a different way. And I watched the family fracture and then patch itself into something new when Lena eventually remarried. Her new husband was Tom. Charming, successful, the kind of man who can sell you hope with a smile. He had 2 kids from a previous marriage, a daughter close to Adam's age, and a son, Aaron, a few years older. Aaron started showing up to family dinners, holidays, gatherings. At first I thought it was nice. A blended family trying to blend. Aaron seemed easy, funny, social. Adam and Aaron even played golf together a few times. I told myself, good, this is healthy, this is what moving on looks like. I didn't know that moving on was already moving against me. And I definitely didn't know that while I was dreaming about baby names with my husband, he was building a secret life inside the same family tree. Looking back, the signs didn't arrive like alarms. They arrived like dust, soft, accumulating, easy to wipe away if you didn't look too closely. About a year before everything collapsed, Adam started pulling away in ways I couldn't quite name. Nothing dramatic, no slammed doors or shouted accusations, just absence. He'd be in the room, but not with me. His phone became an extension of his hand. He started taking calls in the hallway, lowering his voice like the walls might listen. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd smile, lean in to kiss my forehead and say, "Just work, I'm tired." So I believed him, because believing was easier than questioning the man I'd built my life around. Around the same time, Aaron started appearing more often. Family dinners became more frequent. Casual drop-ins turned into long conversations. Aaron had a way of taking up space without seeming to try, leaning back in her chair, laughing loudly, touching Adam's arm when she made a point. I noticed it in flashes, a hand lingering too long, a look held half a second more than necessary. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, Aaron was family now, Adam's stepsister. The word itself felt like a boundary no one would cross. Still, I couldn't shake the subtle shift. When Aaron spoke, Adam listened differently. Not politely, intently. When she texted, he checked his phone immediately. When she came over, he suddenly had energy he hadn't had for me in weeks. One night after a family barbecue, I mentioned it casually. "Aaron seems comfortable with you," I said, trying to keep my tone light as I rinsed plates in the sink. Adam froze for half a second, just long enough for me to notice. "She's just friendly," he said quickly. "You know how she is." I nodded. I didn't push. That was my specialty, making myself small enough not to rock the boat. But my body knew before my mind caught up. I started feeling it in my chest. That tightness when Aaron laughed too hard at Adam's jokes. The heat in my face when I'd walk into a room and conversations would stop just a beat too late. The way Adam would angle his phone away without realizing it. Then came the excuses. "I'm meeting up with family," he'd say, vague. "Running errands," he'd text, hours passing before he came home. "Just need some space tonight." Our intimacy thinned out until it felt fragile, like glass you're afraid to touch too hard. When I reached for him in bed, he'd roll onto his back, sighing like it was an obligation. When I asked if he was still attracted to me, he looked offended, hurt even. "Why would you think that?" he asked. "Where is this coming from?" So I apologized. I apologized for needing reassurance from my own husband. Meanwhile, Aaron's presence grew louder. She started texting me more, asking about my schedule, suggesting double dates that never materialized, casually mentioning how stressed Adam seemed lately. It felt strategic, though I didn't yet have the language for it. At one family dinner, I caught Erin watching me, not with hostility, but with something cooler, assessing, like she was measuring how much space I took up. Later that night, Lena pulled me aside in the kitchen while Adam and Tom argued about sports in the living room. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "You've been quiet lately." I almost told her. The words rose to my throat like a confession, but I swallowed them back. "I'm just tired," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Marriage has seasons," she said softly. "Don't forget that." I clung to that sentence like a life raft, because admitting something was wrong would mean admitting I might lose everything I'd built. So I ignored the way Adam flinched when Erin's name came up. I ignored the way he defended her more fiercely than he defended us. I ignored the voice in my head whispering that trust doesn't feel like this. By the time I finally stopped ignoring it, it was already too late. The moment everything broke didn't feel dramatic at first. It felt ordinary. It was a quiet weekday evening. I'd just gotten home from work, shoes kicked off by the door, hair still damp from a rushed shower. Adam was in the other room. I could hear the low murmur of his voice, then silence. I walked into the kitchen, already thinking about dinner, when I saw his iPad on the counter, unlocked, screen glowing softly like it was waiting for me. I wasn't snooping. That's the lie I used to tell myself. The truth is, some part of me had been bracing for impact for months. I just didn't know what shape it would take. A notification slid down from the top of the screen. "Can't wait to see you later, babe. Wear that red lingerie I like." I read it once, then again. My brain refused to attach meaning to the words at first, like they were written in a foreign language. My heart didn't race. It stalled. Hard. I stared at the sender's name, Erin. My stomach dropped so violently I had to grab the edge of the counter to steady myself. My palms went numb. The room tilted slightly, like I'd stood up too fast. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A joke, a misunderstanding, something twisted out of context. My finger moved before my courage could stop it. I opened the message thread. There weren't a few messages. There were hundreds. Photos I couldn't unsee. Words I couldn't unread. Conversations stretching back months. Flirtation that turned explicit, explicit that turned intimate, intimate that turned routine. They talked about stolen time, about being careful, about how risky it was, about how thrilling that made it. And woven through it all were pieces of my life. References to family dinners I cooked, weekends Adam told me he was busy, nights he rolled away from me and said he was tired. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left the shell standing. That's when Adam walked in. He stopped short when he saw me holding the iPad. For a second, just a second, I saw panic flash across his face before he masked it. "Hey," he said carefully, "what are you doing?" I looked up at him, and the familiarity of his face, this man I'd loved for over a decade, felt surreal, like seeing a stranger wearing someone else's skin. "Who is Erin to you?" I asked. He swallowed. "You already know," he said quietly. I let out a sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "No, I don't, because stepsister isn't this." I turned the screen toward him. "Explain." He sank into the chair like his legs had given out. At first he tried denial, weak, half-formed. "It didn't mean anything. It just happened. You're taking it out of context." But when I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, when I just sat there waiting, he broke. He put his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't plan for this, I swear." "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. 6 months, he said finally. 6 months. 6 months of lying next to me in bed. 6 months of kissing me goodbye. 6 months of talking about trying for a baby while sleeping with another woman. With family. Something inside me snapped then, not loudly, but cleanly. "Get out," I said. He looked up. "What?" "I need space," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Go stay somewhere else." He started crying. Actual tears. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back like his touch burned. "Please," he said, "we can fix this." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You didn't trip and fall into her bed," I said. "You built this." He left that night with a bag and 1,000 apologies trailing behind him. I sat alone in our kitchen long after the door closed, the iPad still glowing on the counter, illuminating the wreckage of a life I thought was solid. And even then, I didn't know this was just the first crack. Because the real devastation wouldn't come from what Adam did. It would come from what the truth would do to the entire family once it finally came out. The house felt too quiet after Adam left. Not peaceful, hollow, like the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something else to break. I didn't move for a long time. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded in front of me, staring at the faint water ring left by my glass. My body felt strangely detached, like the worst part of the pain hadn't caught up yet. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't look at it. I already knew it would be him. When I finally stood up, my legs felt unsteady, as if I'd been sick for days. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, noticing things I'd never noticed before. Adam's shoes by the door. The jacket he always forgot to hang up. The framed photo from our first vacation together, where we were sunburned and smiling like nothing could touch us. I stopped in our bedroom. The bed looked untouched, smooth on his side, the pillow still holding the faint dip of his head. I pressed my hand into the mattress and felt something twist in my chest so sharply I had to sit down. This wasn't supposed to be my life. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How did I miss this? I replayed every moment from the past year, searching for the exact second where I could have stopped it. The nights he came home late, the times he seemed distracted when I spoke, the way he'd grown impatient when I asked for closeness. Had I been boring, too predictable, too safe? The questions turned inward fast, sharp and unforgiving. By morning, I hadn't slept. My eyes burned, my head throbbed. I stood in the shower until the water ran cold, hoping it would wash away the images burned into my mind. Messages, photos, words meant for someone else. When I looked in the mirror afterward, I barely recognized myself. My face looked thinner somehow, like grief had already carved into it. Adam called. I let it ring. Then again, and again. Finally, I answered, not because I was ready, but because I needed the noise to stop. I'm sorry, he said immediately, his voice thick. I didn't sleep. I keep replaying everything. Good, I said flatly. There was a pause on the line. Can we talk? We already did. I mean really talk, he said. I need you to understand. I understand, I interrupted. You cheated on me with your stepsister for 6 months. He exhaled shakily. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I laughed again, short and bitter. How was it supposed to happen, Adam? You were going to just stop one day? Forget her? Pretend it never happened? Silence. That silence felt louder than any excuse. I love you, he said finally. I've always loved you. Something inside me recoiled. You don't do this to someone you love, I said. You don't build a second life inside their blind spots. He started crying again. I listened, unmoved, my heart already hardening around something colder than pain. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I would do. I called Lena. My hands shook as I held the phone. Part of me wanted to protect her, to shield her from the fallout of her son's choices. Another part of me was angry, furious that Adam's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was familial, poison seeping through bloodlines and holidays and shared memories. She answered on the second ring. Sweetheart, she said warmly, is everything okay? The sound of her voice almost broke me. No, I said quietly, it's not. I told her. Not all at once, in fragments, words tumbling over each other, my throat tight as I explained what I'd found, who it was with, how long it had been happening. When I said Aaron's name, there was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Oh my God, Lena whispered. She didn't interrupt. She didn't question me. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she said very softly, I believe you. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. I need to tell Robert, she said, and Tom. The thought made my stomach churn. I knew what this would do. I knew families don't absorb truths like this without splintering. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. So am I, she replied. When the call ended, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. Adam texted later that night. Please don't do this. Please don't tell them yet. We can handle this privately. Privately. As if secrecy hadn't already been his favorite weapon. I turned my phone face down and closed my eyes. For the first time since discovering the truth, the shock finally cracked, and grief rushed in behind it, heavy and suffocating. But beneath the grief, something else was forming. Resolve! Because whatever happened next, I wasn't going to protect a lie ever again. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, each one heavier than the last. 2 days after I told Lena, she called me back. Her voice sounded older somehow, stripped of its usual sharpness. I told Robert, she said, and Tom. I closed my eyes, already bracing. Robert had cried. Actual sobs, she said. The kind that leave you gasping. Tom hadn't said much at first, just sat there, jaw tight, hands clenched so hard his knuckles went white. Erin hadn't been home yet. Lena said Tom wanted to confront her immediately. I didn't know what to say. There was no version of this conversation where anyone walked away intact. That night, Adam showed up at the house without asking. I heard the knock and felt my entire body tense. When I opened the door, he looked wrecked, eyes red, face drawn, like he hadn't eaten in days. You told them, he said, not accusing, just defeated. Yes, I replied. I wasn't going to lie for you. He rubbed his hands over his face. You didn't have to do it like this. How would you have preferred? I asked. Quietly, slowly, so you could manage the damage? His shoulders sagged. You don't understand what this is going to do. I stared at him. I understand exactly what it's going to do, because you already did it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Erin is telling people I manipulated her, that I took advantage of her. The words landed like ice water. What? I asked. She's twisting it, he said quickly. She's saying I came on to her, that she was confused, that she didn't want this but didn't know how to stop it. I laughed, sharp, incredulous. She sent you lingerie messages, Adam. I know, he said desperately. I know, but now she's scared, and Tom is furious. He thinks... I don't care what Tom thinks, I snapped. I care that you destroyed our marriage, and now you want me to clean up the mess. I'm not asking you to fix it, he said. I'm asking you not to make it worse. I felt something inside me harden. Leave, I said quietly. He hesitated. Please. Leave, I repeated. When the door closed behind him, I slid down against it, shaking. The next day, everything exploded. Tom confronted Erin. It wasn't calm. It wasn't measured. According to Lena, it was loud, ugly, full of shouting that rattled walls. Erin denied it at first, then admitted some things, then accused Adam of leading her on, then claimed she'd been emotionally vulnerable. By the end of it, Tom had stormed out. Hours later, Lena called me again, her voice tight with shock. Tom was arrested, she said. My heart dropped. What? He went to Erin's apartment. They argued. It turned physical. Erin's nose is broken. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, my hands trembling. This is my fault, Lena whispered. I brought him into our lives. I rushed into that marriage. No, I said firmly. This isn't on you. This is on them. Adam texted me nonstop that day. This is getting out of control. Erin is lying. People are going to believe her. Once this kind of accusation is out there, it never goes away. I stopped responding. That evening, Adam called. I'm staying at a hotel, he said when I answered. I can't be around you right now. Okay. You really think I'm capable of that? He asked suddenly. Of assault? The question caught me off guard. I thought about it carefully before answering. I think you're capable of betraying me, I said. And right now, I don't know where that line ends. He went quiet. I need you to decide, he said finally. You either trust me or you don't. The ultimatum hung between us, sharp and unfair. After we hung up, I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I went online. I reread everything I'd written, every detail, every doubt. Hundreds of comments stared back at me. Some brutal, some compassionate, some painfully logical. People pointed out things I hadn't wanted to see. Why would Erin send that friendly photo the night of the party? Why wait weeks to say something, only after being confronted? Why does her story keep changing? I read until my eyes burned. And slowly, reluctantly, something shifted. The next morning, I drove to the hotel. Adam opened the door, looking exhausted. He didn't smile, didn't hug me, just stepped aside to let me in. I believe you, I said. His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding them up for days. I'm sorry, I added. I should have trusted you sooner. He nodded but didn't look relieved. Instead, he looked wary. I'm scared, he admitted. Not just of losing you, of what she might tell people, my job, my parents. Once a story like that exists, it doesn't matter if it's true. I asked him to tell me everything, his version of that night. And for the first time, he did. Slowly, carefully, with details that didn't shift when I asked again. It didn't prove anything definitively, but it made sense. When I suggested we confront Erin together, he agreed without hesitation. That was when I knew. If he was lying, he wouldn't want her in the same room. If she was lying, she wouldn't survive it. The night before we confronted Erin, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I lay on my side, staring at the wall, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, the ordinary sounds of a house that had once felt safe. My mind kept looping. every version of the truth colliding with every version of the lie, until I couldn't tell which memory belonged to which. What if I was wrong? What if I had already made the worst mistake of my life? Not when Adam cheated, but when I chose to believe him again. That thought scared me more than being alone. Because if I was wrong this time, it wouldn't just mean heartbreak. It would mean I had defended a monster. It would mean I had failed not only myself, but every woman who'd ever needed to be believed. This wasn't simple betrayal anymore. It was moral freefall. Adam slept on the couch downstairs. He hadn't asked to come back to bed. I hadn't offered. The space between us felt necessary, like touching might contaminate whatever fragile clarity we were trying to build. At some point near dawn, I heard him move. The soft creak of the stairs, the clink of a mug in the kitchen. I didn't go down. By morning, my body felt heavy and unreal, like I was moving through water. I showered, dressed, drank coffee I didn't taste. When Adam and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "She'll come." "How do you know?" I asked. "She thinks she still has control," he replied quietly. That sentence stayed with me, because it described exactly how the last year had felt. Like Aaron had been pulling invisible strings while I apologized for feeling them. When she arrived that evening, my stomach clenched so hard I thought I might be sick. Adam answered the door. The moment Aaron saw him, the color drained from her face. She hadn't expected him to be there. I could tell instantly. "What's going on?" she asked, looking past him at me. Her voice was too high, too careful. "Come in," I said. She hesitated, then stepped inside, hovering near the doorway like she might bolt. We sat in the living room. Adam on one end of the couch, Aaron standing stiffly near the door, me positioned between them like a fault line. Adam didn't waste time. He opened his phone and pulled up Facebook Messenger. He turned the screen toward her. "Do you remember sending this?" he asked, reading aloud her message from the night of the party. "Thanks for a great night." Aaron's eyes flicked to the screen, then away. "And this?" he continued, scrolling to her more recent message about telling the truth. "How do those two messages exist in the same reality?" he asked calmly. For a long moment, Aaron said nothing. Then she started crying. Real tears. Loud, messy, convincing. "I don't remember sending the first one," she said. "I must have blacked out." Adam didn't raise his voice. He didn't move. "You remembered everything else," he said, in detail. She wiped her face. "I'm starting to remember now," she whispered. "Bits and pieces." Her story shifted as she spoke, edges softening, then sharpening, then blurring again. She said she woke up naked, said her door wasn't locked, said something must have happened. Adam stood. He walked closer, not aggressively, but deliberately. "If something happened," he said, "you should be able to describe me." The room went silent. Erin stopped crying. She lifted her head and looked directly at him, anger flashing through the fear. "Just because it was big doesn't mean I wanted it," she snapped. The words echoed. I stared at her. Then I started laughing. Not loudly, not joyfully, just a short, broken sound that escaped before I could stop it. She turned toward me, furious. "What's so funny?" I wiped my eyes. "You're lying," she sneered. "How would you know?" I looked at her steadily. "Because I would know," I said. "Adam isn't." The silence that followed was absolute. Her face flushed red, rage replacing panic. She screamed then, called Adam names, accused me of choosing him again, of always choosing him. I stood up. "Get out," I said. She grabbed her purse, shaking, and stormed to the door. Before leaving, she turned back and spat one last accusation at Adam, the word she'd been building toward all along. Then she left. The door clicked shut. Adam sank back onto the couch, staring at the floor. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke. And yet that was the lowest moment of all. Because even with the truth exposed, even with the lie unraveling, nothing felt healed. Everything felt broken. And I didn't know if our marriage was strong enough to survive the wreckage, or if all we'd done was clear the rubble to reveal something beyond repair. The house felt different after Aaron left. Not lighter, not calmer, just exposed. Like we'd torn away the last layer of insulation, and were now sitting inside something fragile, ribs showing, no protection left. Adam and I stayed on the couch for a long time after the door closed. Our shoulders touched, but neither of us leaned in. The TV was off. The lights were dim. I could hear his breathing, slow, uneven, like he was trying to convince his body it was safe again. "I don't know what to do now," he said finally. His voice wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. It was small. That was when something inside me shifted, not back to how things were, but forward into something clearer. "I don't either," I said honestly, "but I know one thing." He looked at me. "I'm done letting other people control our reality." For months, No, longer than that. I'd been reacting, absorbing, doubting myself, letting guilt and fear dictate every move. Aaron had thrived in that space. So had Adam's silence. So had my own insecurity. That night, I realized something painfully simple. The truth didn't fix everything, but it gave me my footing back. The next morning, Adam told me he needed time away. Not a threat, not punishment. Just honesty. I'm going to stay with my parents for a week, he said. I need to clear my head. I need to feel like myself again. The old me would have panicked, would have begged him not to go, would have heard abandonment in every syllable. Instead, I nodded. Okay, I said, that makes sense. He looked surprised. You're not mad? I'm tired, I replied, and I'm done pretending I'm not. Before he left, he did something I didn't expect. He called my mother. He asked her to come stay with me while he was gone. That small, careful act told me more than any apology could. When my mom arrived that afternoon with a suitcase and a bag of groceries, she didn't bombard me with questions. She cooked dinner. She folded laundry like she'd done 1,000 times when I was growing up. She sat beside me on the couch and let the silence exist. That night, I heard her whispering on the phone to my dad in the guest room. She's hurting, she said softly, but she's stronger than she knows. Something loosened in my chest. Adam called every day he was gone. Not to argue, not to defend himself. Just to check in. How are you feeling today? Did you eat? Tell your mom I said thank you. The conversations were short, careful, but real. When he came back at the end of the week, he looked steadier, not healed, but grounded. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where everything had shattered weeks earlier. I want to move forward, he said, but I know forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I'm not forgetting, I said. I'm choosing what I carry. That was the turning point. Not because everything suddenly became okay, but because I stopped defining myself by what had been done to me and started defining myself by what I would allow from here on. Adam suggested something that surprised me. You should talk to Erin one last time, he said, in public, somewhere safe, just you. Maybe she'll finally tell the truth. Every part of me resisted, but another part, the part that was done being afraid, knew he was right. Not for her, for me. When I messaged Erin and asked to meet for coffee, she agreed almost immediately. When I walked into that cafe days later and saw her sitting there, eyes swollen, shoulders slumped, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. And when she finally broke down and admitted the truth, that she'd slept with a coworker that night, that she'd twisted the story out of jealousy, fear, and obsession, I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort her. I just listened. Because by then, I already knew who she was. And more importantly, I knew who I was. The consequences didn't arrive with fireworks. They arrived quietly, one relationship at a time, one door closing after another, until Erin found herself standing in the echo of her own choices. After our meeting at the cafe, I didn't confront her again. I didn't expose her publicly. I didn't tell the story for her. I didn't have to. The truth has a way of spreading on its own when lies can't hold their shape anymore. Erin tried to repair things at first. She called Lena. She sent long messages filled with apologies that never quite landed because they were still centered on how hard this had been for her. Lena listened once. Then she stopped answering. Tom moved out permanently while his legal situation dragged on. He didn't speak Erin's name unless he had to. When people asked what happened, he said only, I trusted the wrong people. Adam's parents, his father especially, were devastated in a quieter way. There was no shouting. Just disappointment that settled deep and stayed there. Erin was no longer invited to family dinners. No one said it out loud, but the boundary was clear. At one gathering weeks later, someone asked casually if Erin was coming. Lena shook her head. Not tonight. And that was it. No explanation, no defense. Just absence. Adam watched all of this with a complicated expression. Relief tangled with grief. Erin hadn't just hurt me. She'd damaged the entire structure of trust that held his family together. She did this to herself, he said one night, almost like he needed to hear the words out loud. Yes, I replied, but you still have to grieve who you thought she was. That part was harder than either of us expected. As for us, Adam and me, we didn't rush into healing like it was a checklist. There was no grand reconciliation speech, no dramatic vow renewal. We did the unglamorous work. We changed gyms. Completely. No overlapping schedules, no familiar faces. We avoided places Erin might show up, not out of fear, but because peace required distance. I stopped checking Adam's phone, not because I forced myself to trust him, but because I realized trust rebuilt under surveillance isn't trust at all, it's probation. He noticed. One night he said quietly, "You don't look anymore." "I don't want to live like that," I replied. "If I ever feel like I have to again, we'll already be done." He nodded. He didn't argue. At family gatherings, Adam stayed beside me, not possessively, but intentionally. If Aaron tried to approach him early on, he kept his answers short and neutral, then stepped away. He never put himself in a position that could be misread again. And I watched him, not with suspicion, but with awareness. Trust didn't snap back into place. It seeped in slowly, carefully, like water finding cracks in dry ground. Erin's life changed in subtler ways. She started dating the coworker she'd slept with that night. She called me once to tell me, her voice bright in a way that felt forced. I listened politely. I wished her well. 2 months later, she called again, crying this time. "He cheated on me," she said. "I don't know who else to talk to." I met her for coffee. Not because we were close, but because I understood something she didn't yet. Isolation hurts more than consequences. I listened. I gave measured advice. I didn't rescue her. I didn't minimize what she'd done. When she thanked me, I accepted it without reopening the door. We met a few more times after that. The friendship existed, but it was thinner, boundaried, changed. Adam kept his distance, just as he promised. Polite at gatherings, distant, always with me. Then came the comment. At my aunt's birthday party, weeks after things had settled, I walked up behind a group of cousins and caught the tail end of Erin's voice. Well, you know how Adam is. The tone wasn't overt, just suggestive enough to leave residue. When she saw me, she changed the subject instantly. Later, one of my cousins pulled me aside. "She's been hinting," she said. "Nothing direct, but people notice." That night I confronted Erin. She denied it, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things again. This time I didn't argue. I just stepped back. I stopped answering her calls. I declined coffee. At family events, I was civil but distant. No drama, no speeches. Distance did what confrontation never could. When my mom finally asked what had happened between us, I gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something that landed harder than anything else. "I'm not surprised," she said quietly. "She's always been jealous of what you built." I asked why she never said anything. She smiled sadly. "Because you had to see it yourself." Now, Erin and I exist on opposite edges of the same family space. We acknowledge each other. That's it. Adam doesn't ask about her anymore. And in the quiet left behind, I realized something important. I didn't win. I wasn't victorious. But I was free. Free from self-doubt that wasn't mine to carry. Free from protecting people who didn't protect me. Free from confusing loyalty with silence. The truth didn't destroy us. The lie almost did. The consequences didn't arrive with fireworks. They arrived quietly, one relationship at a time, one door closing after another, until Erin found herself standing in the echo of her own choices. After our meeting at the cafe, I didn't confront her again. I didn't expose her publicly. I didn't tell the story for her. I didn't have to. The truth has a way of spreading on its own when lies can't hold their shape anymore. Erin tried to repair things at first. She called Lena. She sent long messages filled with apologies that never quite landed because they were still centered on how hard this had been for her. Lena listened once. Then she stopped answering. Tom moved out permanently while his legal situation dragged on. He didn't speak Erin's name unless he had to. When people asked what happened, he said only, "I trusted the wrong people." Adam's parents, his father especially, were devastated in a quieter way. There was no shouting. Just disappointment that settled deep and stayed there. Erin was no longer invited to family dinners. No one said it out loud, but the boundary was clear. At one gathering weeks later, someone asked casually if Erin was coming. Lena shook her head. "Not tonight." And that was it. No explanation, no defense. Just absence. Adam watched all of this with a complicated expression. Relief tangled with grief. Erin hadn't just hurt me. She'd damaged the entire structure of trust that held his family together. "She did this to herself," he said one night, almost like he needed to hear the words out loud. "Yes," I replied, "but you still have to grieve who you thought she was." That part was harder than either of us expected. As for us, Adam and me, we didn't rush into healing like it was a checklist. There was no grand reconciliation speech, no dramatic vow renewal. We did the unglamorous work. We changed gyms, completely. No overlapping schedules, no familiar faces. We avoided places Erin might show up, not out of fear, but because peace required distance. I stopped checking Adam's phone, not because I forced myself to trust him, But because I realized trust rebuilt under surveillance isn't trust at all, it's probation. He noticed. One night he said quietly, "You don't look anymore." "I don't want to live like that," I replied. "If I ever feel like I have to again, we'll already be done." He nodded. He didn't argue. At family gatherings, Adam stayed beside me, not possessively, but intentionally. If Aaron tried to approach him early on, he kept his answers short and neutral, then stepped away. He never put himself in a position that could be misread again. And I watched him, not with suspicion, but with awareness. Trust didn't snap back into place. It seeped in slowly, carefully, like water finding cracks in dry ground. Erin's life changed in subtler ways. She started dating the coworker she'd slept with that night. She called me once to tell me, her voice bright in a way that felt forced. I listened politely. I wished her well. 2 months later, she called again, crying this time. "He cheated on me," she said. "I don't know who else to talk to." I met her for coffee. Not because we were close, but because I understood something she didn't yet. Isolation hurts more than consequences. I listened. I gave measured advice. I didn't rescue her. I didn't minimize what she'd done. When she thanked me, I accepted it without reopening the door. We met a few more times after that. The friendship existed, but it was thinner, boundaried, changed. Adam kept his distance, just as he promised. Polite at gatherings, distant, always with me. Then came the comment. At my aunt's birthday party, weeks after things had settled, I walked up behind a group of cousins and caught the tail end of Erin's voice. "Well, you know how Adam is." The tone wasn't overt, just suggestive enough to leave residue. When she saw me, she changed the subject instantly. Later, one of my cousins pulled me aside. "She's been hinting," she said. "Nothing direct, but people notice." That night I confronted Erin. She denied it, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, again. This time I didn't argue. I just stepped back. I stopped answering her calls. I declined coffee. At family events, I was civil but distant. No drama, no speeches. Distance did what confrontation never could. When my mom finally asked what had happened between us, I gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something that landed harder than anything else. "I'm not surprised," she said quietly. "She's always been jealous of what you built." I asked why she never said anything. She smiled sadly, "Because you had to see it yourself." Now, Erin and I exist on opposite edges of the same family space. We acknowledge each other. That's it. Adam doesn't ask about her anymore. And in the quiet left behind, I realized something important. I didn't win. I wasn't victorious. But I was free. Free from self-doubt that wasn't mine to carry. Free from protecting people who didn't protect me. Free from confusing loyalty with silence. The truth didn't destroy us. The lie almost did.